The morning sun crawled over the manicured hedges of Willow Creek Estates, a neighborhood where the grass was measured in millimeters and the silence was strictly enforced. Arthur Pendergast, the president of the Homeowners Association, stood on his porch with a clipboard and a frown. He lived for the rules. To Arthur, a stray dandelion wasn't just a weed. It was a declaration of war against civilization. Inside the sprawling ranch-style house at 42 Oak Lane, Sarah Miller was nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee. She was dressed in an oversized college hoodie and yoga pants, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. To the neighbors, Sarah was just the quiet woman who moved in 6 months ago, the one who worked odd hours in civil service and kept her blinds drawn during the day. Her husband, David, a high school history teacher, was already at work. Sarah was exhausted. She had spent the last 48 hours coordinating a multi-agency task force on a drug trafficking ring that had been bleeding the county dry. All she wanted was 4 hours of uninterrupted sleep. A sharp, rhythmic rapping at her front door shattered that dream. Sarah groaned, pulling the hood over her ears. The knocking didn't stop. It was persistent, entitled, and loud. She trudged to the door and pulled it open to find Arthur Pendergast and 2 other members of the Architectural Integrity Committee. "Can I help you?" Sarah asked, her voice raspy from lack of sleep. Arthur didn't look her in the eye. Instead, his gaze darted to the driveway. "Mrs. Miller, we've received several complaints. Your vehicle, the black SUV, is parked in the driveway." Section 4, Paragraph B of the Willow Creek bylaws states that all utility or oversized vehicles must be garaged or screened from street view. Sarah blinked. "It's my work vehicle." "Mr. Pendergast, the garage is full of moving boxes we haven't unpacked yet. It'll be in there by next week." "Next week is not today," Arthur snapped, finally looking at her with a condescending sneer. "And there's the matter of the unauthorized equipment visible through the windshield. Those mounts and wires? It looks cluttered. It lowers the aesthetic value of the block. Move it, or we will be forced to take further action." "I'm sleeping, Arthur," Sarah said, her patience thinning to a needlepoint. "The SUV stays where it is for today. Goodbye." She shut the door before he could respond. She didn't see Arthur's face turn a shade of purple that matched his overpriced polo shirt. 3 hours later, Sarah was jolted awake by the unmistakable sound of a siren, a short, sharp yip followed by the crackle of a loudspeaker. "Resident of 42 Oak Lane, please step outside." Sarah sat up, her heart hammering against her ribs. That wasn't an HOA greeting. That was a police command. She looked out the window and saw 2 patrol cars parked behind her SUV, their blue and red lights dancing off the white siding of her house. Arthur Pendergast stood on the sidewalk, arms folded, looking like a king who had finally summoned his executioners. Sarah felt a surge of cold, hard adrenaline. She didn't reach for her robe. She reached for the heavy leather belt sitting on her nightstand. Outside, Officer Miller, no relation, and Officer Holloway were feeling uncomfortable. They had been dispatched for a suspicious vehicle and potential squatter situation, reported by a very insistent HOA president who claimed a woman was running an unauthorized commercial enterprise out of a residential home. "I'm telling you, she's hostile," Arthur told the officers. "She's been hiding that vehicle there for days. For all we know, she's stripping parts. This is a high-end community. We don't allow this element here." The front door of 42 Oak Lane opened. Sarah stepped out onto the porch. She wasn't wearing the hoodie anymore. She was wearing a crisp, tan tactical shirt with sheriff emblazoned in gold across the back. Her badge, a 7-pointed star that caught the afternoon sun with blinding intensity, was clipped to her belt next to her sidearm. The 2 police officers froze. Their postures shifted instantly from authoritative to terrified. "Morning, boys," Sarah said, her voice dropping into the low, commanding tone she used for budget hearings and hostage negotiations. "Sheriff Miller," Officer Holloway stammered, his hand flying to his forehead in a reflexive salute. We didn't realize. We got a call about a suspicious SUV." Sarah walked down the steps, her boots clicking on the pavement. She stopped inches from Arthur Pendergast, who had suddenly shrunk about 6 inches in height. His clipboard was trembling. "A suspicious vehicle, Arthur?" Sarah asked, her eyes locking onto his. You mean the 2024 Tahoe equipped with a secure radio frequency, a laptop mount, and a government-issued VIN? The one I told you was my work vehicle? Arthur swallowed hard. I didn't know you were... you didn't provide the proper documentation to the board regarding your profession. My profession is public record, Arthur, Sarah said. And as for the further action you promised? You called the local PD to report a fellow law enforcement officer's unmarked unit as a nuisance. You wasted city resources, pulled these two officers away from their patrol sectors, and disturbed the peace of this neighborhood because you didn't like the look of my antenna. She turned to the two officers. Holloway, Miller, did Mr. Pendergast here mention that I had already identified this as a work vehicle to him this morning? No, ma'am, Holloway said, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere behind Arthur's head. He said the occupant was squatting and uncooperative. Sarah nodded slowly. Filing a false police report is a misdemeanor, Arthur. Harassment is a civil matter. But when you use the police as your personal concierge service to enforce HOA bylaws, it becomes my matter. Now look here, Arthur blustered, trying to regain some shred of dignity. The bylaws apply to everyone. Even sheriffs! This is a private community, and I pay my dues, Sarah countered. But I also run this county, which means I know the zoning laws better than you know your own golf handicap. This oversized vehicle rule you're quoting, it has an exemption for emergency and municipal vehicles. It's been there since 1994. Maybe you should have read the fine print before you called in the cavalry. The neighbors were starting to emerge from their homes. Mrs. Higgins, from across the street, was filming on her phone. Mr. Henderson was leaning on his rake, grinning. Arthur was a man who had spent a decade making everyone's life miserable over mailbox colors. Watching him get dismantled by the highest-ranking law enforcement officer in the region was better than any Sunday night drama. Officers, Sarah said, turning back to the patrolman, since you're already here and the complainant is so concerned about neighborhood safety, why don't we do a quick canvass? I notice Mr. Pendergast's hedges are encroaching on the public sidewalk by at least 3 inches, creating a pedestrian hazard. And is that a non-permitted storage shed I see in his backyard? Arthur's eyes went wide. That's a gazebo. Looks like an unpermitted structure to me, Sarah said with a thin, dangerous smile. Maybe we should call code enforcement, since we're being so diligent today. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Arthur squeaked. There was no misunderstanding, Sarah said, her voice turning cold as ice. There was an abuse of power. You thought you could bully a woman you didn't recognize because she didn't fit your image of what a Willow Creek resident should be. You wanted to show me who was in charge of this street. She stepped even closer, her badge inches from his face. I am in charge of the 600 square miles surrounding this street. If you ever use my officers as a tool for your petty vendettas again, I won't just cite you. I will make sure the board has to hold its next meeting in a courtroom. Am I clear? Arthur nodded so fast he nearly gave himself whiplash. Clear. Perfectly clear, Sheriff. Good. Now get off my lawn and take your clipboard with you. Arthur practically sprinted back to his house. The two officers shared a relieved look. Sorry about the wake-up call, Sheriff, Holloway said, suppressed amusement twitching at the corners of his mouth. We'll make sure to flag this address in the CAD system so no more suspicious vehicle calls get through from the HOA. Appreciate it, boys, Sarah said, her posture finally relaxing. Go get some coffee on me. She watched them drive away before turning back to her house. The neighborhood was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of a predator who had just been reminded who the apex was. As Sarah walked back inside, her phone buzzed. It was a text from David. Hey, how was your nap? Did the HOA guy ever come back about the SUV? Sarah smiled, leaning against the doorframe. She looked out at her black SUV, sitting proudly in the driveway, the sunlight glinting off the county sheriff. Decal, she had finally decided to stop hiding. She typed back, he came by. We had a little chat about the rules. I don't think he'll be bothering us again. For the next few months, Willow Creek Estates underwent a subtle transformation. The Architectural Integrity Committee became remarkably less active. Arthur Pendergast was seen less frequently on his porch with his clipboard, and when he did see Sarah, he didn't just look away. He gave a stiff, terrified tip of his hat. The suspicious SUV remained in the driveway whenever the garage was full. Nobody complained. In fact, the neighbors started coming by with pies and thank you notes, grateful that the man, who used to measure their grass height, was now too scared to leave his own house. Sarah finally got her 4 hours of sleep, but she also got something better. She had moved into the neighborhood looking for a quiet place to live. Instead, she had turned it into a community, one where the rules were finally dictated by common sense and respect rather than a man with a clipboard. One evening, while Sarah was watering the small garden she'd started in the front yard, a young girl from 2 doors down rode by on her bike. She stopped and looked at Sarah's badge, which was pinned to her belt as she prepared to head into the night shift. "Are you the boss of the police?" the girl asked, wide-eyed. Sarah knelt down, smiling at the girl. "I'm the sheriff, honey. It means I look after everyone in the county." "Even Mr. Pendergast?" Sarah chuckled. "Especially Mr. Pendergast. Everyone has to follow the law, no matter how many clipboards they have." As the sun set over the perfectly trimmed hedges of Willow Creek, Sarah felt a sense of peace. The HOA had sent the cops after her wife, but in doing so, they had accidentally invited the law into their own backyard. And as Arthur Pendergast watched from behind his tightly closed curtains, he finally understood that while he might rule the HOA, Sarah Miller ruled the county, and the county always wins.